Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. Is the golden age ending in India? We'll explore this in this opinion piece from Bloomberg and how the shifting demographics and rising access to banking could curb demand for gold. Yes, this comes to us again from Bloomberg. It's an opinion piece here. Quite interesting. It is something that I never really have thought about it because sometimes there are long ingrained cultural aspects, especially in the East, that transcend generations to the core. And I would figure if something like this was to happen, it would have happened a while ago. But this is something we'll kind of take a look at here. The world's most important gold market isn't what it used to be. Just a decade ago, India's hunger for gold jewelry and bullion meant it accounted for about a quarter of global demand. Consumption has since fallen by about 24%. Ahead of Sunday's Diwali festival, which is actually today, when purchases traditionally peak, imports in September fell to the lowest levels in 3 years. Now, I will preface this that some of the reason very well could be because of the restrictions on gold that has been well documented, and actually in a previous video that I did about India and their increased demand for silver, in many cases to replace gold, could very well be that is the actual cause. But I think there's something to this that we should consider in this particular thing, and I think there's a lot of data here that kind of is quite fascinating to see where things are going in terms of the increase of access to banking. So India's importance as a source of gold demand has been gradually shrinking here. We can see that these are what's been going on throughout quite a number of years here. We can see here that ETFs in 2013 were quite high. But these are the metric tons by metric ton here, with the highest level being 6,000 metric tons in all the different areas around the world, from Europe to the Middle East. But India here is obviously a pretty large chunk. China is the only chunk bigger here, as well as other regions. But it is fascinating to see how it has kind of declined. But look, in 2016 it was very low too. As gold demand was lower then than in 2018. Part of this reaction to short-term pricing factors. Buyers tend to stay away from the bullion price in Mumbai, rises above 30,000 rupees or $422.97 for 10 grams. Thanks to the rupee slump and the metal breaking through its long-standing $1,350 a troy ounce ceiling, it has been in territory now for the past 2 years and is currently trading at 38,200 rupees. There are longer-term issues to worry about, though. About 2/3 of the country's gold is bought in rural areas, where its traditional roles as investment and endowment are oddly intertwined. Rural Indians are far more inclined to buy gold jewelry than their urban counterparts, and tend to favor plain pieces that can easily be valued and traded in if money gets tight. That makes demographic changes a risk to the entire market. Rural population growth is grinding to a halt as people migrate to the cities and birth rates fall, shifting the focus of consumption spending. Millennials in urban India are increasingly tempted by goods rather than gold, particularly luxury fashion and smartphones, according to a report by the World Gold Council. We'll actually kind of take a look at this report because I think that is an interesting thing to see here as the drivers of Indian gold demand, and I think that is the key. I think that's something that we'll take a look at and see exactly how this plays out. Oh, we got to have access to that, so we won't be able to see that report. But it's interesting to see that as a factor there. There are also a growing number of alternatives to gold jewelry for those who want to save up for a rainy day. In the case of rural India, the better term might be a dry day, as weak monsoons tend to tighten farmers' cash flows and force them to pawn or sell. Gold was originally popular as a store of value because banks weren't available, but the share of rural adults with an account has soared to 79% in 2017 from 33% in 2011, according to the World Bank. A larger proportion of the adult population now has a bank account than in Hungary or Turkey. So here is the share of Indian adults with bank accounts that has soared in recent years from 2011, 2014, and 2017. And we can see here is India, massive growth here. Pretty amazing. So I think this is something that really could be a factor that could really affect the demand on gold in the coming years. And maybe even the demand for silver, too. Considering the State Bank of India's current 6.4% benchmark one-year deposit rate and inflation at 3.99%, a savings account is a far better way to protect your wealth against rising prices than a bangle. That's interesting. Even in deprived urban areas, alternative stores and sources of capital are opening up. About 4 million people in Delhi's shanty towns will be granted ownership rights, the government said this week, a move that would help them take out loans to build houses. To be sure, the allure of gold can't be wiped out by banking. Another reason that buying tends to be so vigorous as of late in October is that it's peak wedding season. About half of India's gold jewelry demand is for the heavy pieces worn as part of the bridal outfit, a dowry, according to the World Gold Council. Consumer spending, the other main leg of gold demand, alongside investment, industrial uses are a distant third, will tend to rise with income, benefiting from the same urbanization that's depressing purchases in rural areas. This year, however, consumers are a tough market to bet on. Motor vehicle purchases, usually a good proxy for the public's appetite for big-ticket items, are collapsing. Sales of cars, trucks, and buses fell by more than a third in September from a year earlier, and two-wheelers were down 22.1%. And this chart is telling the share of Indians who think their economic situation has worsened as its highest level since 2013. So there you go. You see that it is growing there at 47% here. Almost half of Indians think their economic situation has worsened. The same pattern is borne out by broader data. The share of consumers who think their current economic situation has worsened and is set to deteriorate over the coming year was its highest since September of 2013, according to the Reserve Bank of India. Perceptions of the job market are the worst in 7 years of record. For the first time in 4 years of data, consumers think they're spending less on discretionary purchases. India's outsized role in the world gold market isn't going to disappear overnight. Its consumers still account for more than 1 in 6 ounces bought globally. That's amazing, even at today. But it just goes to show you that, the decrease in demand for gold because of these factors, cultural and the shift of tides of change generationally, I think is something that we should consider, as well as those restrictions that many of you have pointed out in my last video about silver, increase in silver demand in India. Now think about that increased silver demand, and that could continue to grow. But when you have almost half of all Indians that think their economic situation has worsened since 2013, they're going to go to something that they can still use that is luxurious and beautiful, and that is silver. They've done it before. So that is an interesting change, and see how increased silver demand could potentially mean a shortage in supply in the coming years. Still, the change in gold demand should be a warning to investors. For many years, its role as a rural investment made India a downside buffer for the yellow metal, with farmers rushing in to make physical purchases whenever the price fell to levels that tempted investors to liquidate their positions. As the country changes, that dynamic is disappearing. While high gold prices still appear to put off purchases, consumption-focused urban jewelry buyers aren't necessarily going to be around to prop up the market when it's weak. Gold's attraction for investors has long been its counter-cyclical tendencies. As this crucial part of the market grows more pro-cyclical, they do well to pay attention. And I think this is a well done piece, I believe. And I think it's telling because that means that the price of gold could actually go down because of the shortage of demand in India. India, per capita, as part of their culture, I believe it is the most, because it's not only part of the just the regular part of preserving wealth there in India, but it's also part of their religious and cultural experience, maybe even more so than China, I believe. So I think it's really something that we should pay attention to that could cause the price to go down. But make no mistake, if the price does go down, that tide could turn in India, maybe not quite as much as in years past. However, I do believe that if the price does go down more, well, we'll see the central banks accumulate more gold to pick up the slack. Why? Because as there's more access to banking and digital currencies, and digital representations of currencies like the dollar, the rupee, and so forth, well, you're going to need the ultimate protection. As the Dutch central bank warned us, that gold is there in the case of an economic reset or a reset of currencies to start over. And I believe the central banks understand this greatly, which is why that you and I can still be rest assured that when we accumulate physical gold, we are preserving our wealth. And I think it's something that would be paramount for us to continue in this matter, even if the price of gold does drop a couple $100 on account of this activity, if it's measured and if it's sustainable. So there you have it. Very interesting indeed. Post your thoughts below. And I want to appreciate all of you guys for stopping by here today, because I do post videos daily. If for some reason you don't get a notification of a video, either by email or what have you from clicking the bell, or in your subscription feeds, if you don't see a video show up there, pop on over to the channel and you should see it there. So again, I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude, y'all, for watching, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.